Interviewing, getting the facts and the feelings. How to be a better electronic journalist. Thinking ahead. Interview questions to ask yourself before you go out to do your job. How do I make the story real for my viewers and listeners? How do I make a difference in my community? Because when you report on issues, you are making a difference for your community. How do I tell this story clearly and in a compelling way? Because if your audience doesn't understand you, you're not doing your job. Don't interview the same people all the time. For example, if the water rates are going up, who do you interview? Well, you should probably interview the people who are being affected, the consumers, the people who pay for the water. Try to stay away from the officials who are actually raising the water rates. Be prepared. Learn about as much in advance as you can about the subject you are going to cover. Brainstorm in the newsroom with your colleagues. Check the internet for information. You know that Google is a great tool for that. Work with the photographer that you are with in preparing questions while driving to the interview or working a story. Write down your questions beforehand. That way, if you forget, you'll have them right in front of you. Do information gathering process either right before or after the interview. Use the interview to get good soundbite. Now, what I mean by that is you should ask questions and write down the information for items that you really don't think you'll get a great soundbite for. Then you can save the real good soundbites, and when you get back to the station, you won't have to go through 15 minutes of tape. You only have to go through about half of that, and it makes your job much easier. Continuing with be prepared, always pay attention to what's in the news. You have to be up to speed with the issues of the day. The first question you will ask for your interview will dictate the whole experience. If you ask a question that makes no sense to the interviewee, they're going to wonder why they're wasting their time with you. Don't tell the interviewee questions beforehand. You get much more spontaneous answers if they don't know the questions beforehand. Ask questions people can answer in short phrases. You don't want a great, big, long freight train answer that can be difficult to edit. Make and maintain eye contact. Be interested and listen to what the interviewee has to say for follow-up questions. Sometimes you get your best answers when you do that. Don't chew gum. Stay close to the camera and have the person look at you, not the camera lens. Interviewing mechanics. Find out the interviewee's full name and have them spell it on camera or on your recorder and write it down. Have them pronounce the name correctly in case you have to pronounce it yourself in the story. Get the phone number and title of the person in case you have to get a hold of them again. Ask questions that begin with why, how, or what. That way you'll probably get more than a 1 or 2 word response. Don't be afraid to ask questions more than once. If you rephrase your question, you might get a better answer the next time. Always ask the photographer you're working with if they have a question for the interviewee. I can't tell you how many times that I did that when I was working with a photographer and I got some great answers. 2 heads are better than 1. Always ask the interviewee anything else you'd like to add. Once again, it works like a charm. Many times you're interviewing somebody and you might not think of something to ask them, and you'll get an answer that you might have to put in your story because it's so good. Interviewing mechanics. Let the interviewee finish their sentence. And you might have noticed on the slide before I had interviewer. It should have been interviewee, so I apologize for that. Don't say uh-huh or okay during the interview. Just let the person talk. If someone is avoiding your question, ask it again, and then ask why if they're avoiding the question. Don't do it rudely. Just ask them why. For a 1:30 television story, television package, usually the average soundbite length is 10 seconds. Radio soundbites average between 5 to 15 seconds long for commercial radio. Don't nod your head, laugh, or smile for cutaway shots if you're on camera for a TV story, and get on the same level physically as the interviewee if you're doing a TV story. Dressing appropriately. Dress modestly and professionally, as we see a slide of Edward R. Murrow as he's reporting from London during World War II. If you're going to interview a lawmaker in the Capitol, wear a suit. A sports jacket is fine. If you're covering a hot weather story, a polo shirt is okay. Keep khaki slacks and boots next to your desk in case you're going out to cover something a little less formal. Jewelry should be kept to a minimum. telling their stories, as we see a picture of Walter Cronkite, who at one point during the 1970s and 80s was known as the most trusted man in America. He was an anchor for CBS News. Look for people who can tell a story. Don't ask, how do you feel questions when someone is in shock or grief. Can you imagine how rude that can be? If you do something, you might approach them and say, I'm really sorry for your loss. If there's any way you could possibly share a story with me about your loved one, a good story that we can share with people, they might be willing to talk with you. Kindness, tact, and patience are needed in such a situation. Ask the camera person to stand back, go up and talk with the person first. Don't shove the camera in their face. That is one of the rudest things that you can do. Be sensitive at all times. You'll have to knock on doors, be ready for rejection, and be a person first, a journalist second. Check your bias. Don't make assumptions about anyone that you're going to interview. Don't start the interview by saying, I had no idea you would be, that tall, that short, whatever. Don't assume all people think alike about any given topic because everyone has their own thoughts and feelings.